We've talked a lot of big picture expansion on the football side that pushes the needle, but we're adding Arizona in basketball. If Louisville's on the table, can the Big 12 snatch them up? There's so much to consider on the hardwood. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from the Surface of the Sun. That's Mike Randall. Mike Randall from FTN Network. That is For the Numbers. And Mike is a college basketball expert. We want to thank you for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. Today, let's get into expansion on the hardwood. Contenders and pretenders in March, and win or lose in the Big 12 tournament. That is the question. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app for the easiest tickets in the world. Mike, in expansion, we're talking Florida State suing the ACC right now. If Louisville might be on the table or a Pitt. But before we even get to the hypotheticals, what we know, Arizona is coming to the Big 12. Texas and Oklahoma are leaving. There's the addition of Colorado, Utah, Arizona State as well. Are we creating the first mega conference in college basketball history?
Yeah, you are. And you're having some tremendous rivalries that are going to be established. Look, I'm hearing rumors that Porter Moser is looking to leave Oklahoma, that it's been sort of up and down, just hasn't been able to move forward with that program. Texas, of course, had the big year last year, but I think bringing in Arizona is bringing a different dynamic to the Big 12. There are other conferences that look at the Big 12 and end up saying they've gamed the system with the net and this and that. It is the best conference in college basketball. Adding those teams coming in, teams are going to be able to travel. You have a powerhouse in Arizona. It's going to be a mega power. And we know that matchups draw attention. And you're going to tell me that a Houston-Arizona, a Kansas-Arizona match, those are going to be incredible. I can't wait to see it.
Mike, for me, a year ago, I was saying the addition of a BYU, a UCF, even where Cincinnati has gone, is not perfect for the conference. Does it dilute the back end? And now this year, we've seen teams like Oklahoma State and West Virginia dilute, and a squad like BYU be so impressively good. I asked that same question here, like Arizona State, Colorado, Utah. You haven't seen a good decade stretch out of those schools. Does this dilute the back half and give you more quad 2 or quad 3 games?
Yeah, it doesn't dilute, I think, the overall, because I was worried that you were going to bring in those 4 teams and they were going to struggle this year. I feel foolish in saying that. BYU, Mark Pope, one of the most underrated coaches in college basketball. And what you get here is a unique style. They shoot the 3, they play hard, big home court advantage. So I think getting those teams in, again, you're going to raise those programs while raising the teams at the back end. And listen, UCF pulled off some tough wins this year. Cincinnati been tough, of course, and needless to say about Houston. So I think the addition of those 4 schools actually somehow helped the Big 12. I predicted they were all going to struggle. They've competed quite well, especially Houston and BYU.
Let's go a quick aside here. You mentioned BYU and Mark Pope. The way that I put it early in the year, it was live or die by the 3. The adjustment came once they got confidence to play much more poised defense, as seen where against Oklahoma State, the offense struggles in the first half. The defense was electric. And in the second half, where you needed more offense, BYU put up 53 points. That's effectively that program in a nutshell. How did we get this version of BYU so quickly?
Yeah, we got this because of Mark Pope being as great as he is. He came up with a strategy on how to win these games. Sure, they rank number 1 in the Big 12 with over 50% of their attempts coming from beyond the arc. But they're guarding inside the arc fairly well, holding teams under 50%, and they've been great on the defensive boards. You know, if you're a team that struggles in one-on-one isolation situations, the best thing you can do, Drake, is you can have rebounding because you limit the number of chances. BYU is fundamentally sound. BYU is not going to make a lot of turnovers or errors, and they're going to box out and not give you second chances. So if you can get forced into mid-range jump shots and long jump shots, and they get back on defense, which well-coached teams do, they can end up finding a way to succeed. And you've seen it here with Pope, despite the fact, like I said, more than half their shots come from beyond the arc.
Mike, let's take you back into this expansion realm and where it is moving. We have heard even Brett Yormark in the last week, the commissioner of the Big 12, say that, hey, before we start talking about college football playoff revenue distribution, wait for further expansion. basically a hint that the Big 12 might not be done. If the ACC is the target, before we talk about even individual programs, what is the state of that conference right now from a basketball standpoint?
For the ACC, they're still strong at the top. What happened, Drake, is I'm a Boston College grad, so I can tell you exactly what happened. If you're going to switch conferences, the leaders, the stakeholders in that university need to get together and say, are we willing to commit all of our resources and our vision to be competitive? Boston College has still kept a high academic threshold for student athletes coming in. Not that that's bad, but you do have to lower it a little bit if you're going to get into a more competitive area. Boston College, also a cold weather city, now competing down in the ACC. So a lot of schools that have joined the conferences have tried to do so while maintaining their original identity. I remember back when Jim O'Brien was coaching at Boston College, they didn't let 3 players in: Mike Bradley, Elton Tyler, and Jonathan DePina. This is where those 3 players went. Elton Tyler went to Miami and eventually made the NBA. Jonathan DePina went to Harvard, and Mike Bradley went to Kentucky. Those are the type of players that you need to allow in. So what I'm saying is when teams come into the Big 12 or they leave another conference, it's not just about being competitive. Oftentimes you can compete right away. Boston College did compete right away when they went to the ACC. They just haven't competed since. So what you're seeing with a BYU, read a story on them, they're talking about adjusting their admissions process to see if they can create larger variance in the players that they're bringing in. It's great. It's great for the school. It's great for the basketball, and it's great for the conference.
With the idea that Florida State wants out of the ACC, and they're the ones that really have pushed the needle in that conference, Clemson and North Carolina have made it clear that those universities are also not happy. NC State in that conversation with Miami. But Mike, let's assume that those brands, as they look for a Big 10 or an SEC, are off the table for the Big 12. Who in that middle of the pack, from a revenue standpoint, could this conference target? And does it look shiny to have a Pitt, a Virginia Tech, or especially a Louisville in this league?
It does to a certain extent. And you're looking at a program like Louisville. That's a program that can actually be great. They have the support. They have the fan base. They've just struggled. So we've seen Louisville with Rick Pitino actually win a championship. So they've been great before. Those are the type of programs you want to target. Programs that may be down, but show that upside that can move forward. Clemson's been solid in basketball, but nothing great. So Louisville's been competitive in both football and basketball. You're looking for the upside in a buy low that can get to that ceiling that only a few schools can reach.
Mike, even big picture, if the Big 12 expands to 20 teams, because that seems to be where each conference wants to land in this age of super conference, mega conference, is that good for college basketball? We have only talked football and expansion. Is what is happening right now across the sphere of the NCAA good for college basketball?
I think we underestimate how much teams and programs can adjust. So the Pac-12 is now disintegrating. People are complaining about that. We adjusted. We adjusted when the NCAA tournament went from 64 to 68. We adjusted when teams in college football switched conferences. We adjusted with the playoffs, the college football playoff. Kids will adjust. Programs will be great no matter what we do. It's going to end up working because people are committed. And once they get on the field, they get on the court, they perform. So I think it's fine. And I think as much as NIL has driven some coaches out of the game, it was inevitable. I think in the end, there's a bump initially, but teams adjust, programs adjust. Great is going to be great. And we're going to see a fantastic product on the field or the court.
Coming up, let's talk contenders and pretenders in the Big 12 in March right here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we get there, let's tell you about Nissan. Drive fast and drive it right now. You want to be like me? Drive a Nissan. I drive a Nissan Maxima. It's sitting right outside my house right now, and you can push things a little bit further with the Pathfinder or the Armada or Nissan Rogue. The 2024 Rogue is perfect for any city drivers or great escapers. Gone are the days connecting with your phone. The Google Assistant and a 12.3-inch HD touchscreen will do it all for you. The Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. How about the Pathfinder? 2024 Pathfinder has room for up to 8. When I was in college, I fit 9 in my Maxima. Fit 8 in the Pathfinder, but comfortable comfortably. 284 horsepower, I can't count that high, and 6,000 pounds of towing, or the 2024 Nissan Armada will change what you expect from an SUV. A 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury. Explore the further 2024 Armada and take the Nissan Rogue, Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com and shop NissanUSA.com. Mike Randall of FTN Network here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Contenders in the Big 12. We know about Houston. We know they're right there. We've seen the history, the dynasty, the prowess across college basketball of a Kansas. Iowa State's defense is good. But looking a little bit deeper, Mike, who are the teams that you think are built for March in this league?
Teams that are built for March. We talked about Houston. That's fine. Iowa State, I think, is fantastic because I like styles. You know, I was out there telling people that Virginia was going to at least make the Final Four the year after they went out in the first round. Why? They have a unique style. Why is Houston so good? Because they're relentless on defense and you cannot simulate it. Why have teams like Kentucky and Louisville made run? Because they have a unique style. So Iowa State has it. They just have to be able to score, but their defense cannot be simulated. Baylor is certainly solid. I don't see Texas Tech making a run. Grant McCasland doing an incredible job. I just doubt their staying power. But if you look in the Big 12 tournament, Kansas is lurking. How about a month ago, everybody thought Kansas was going to be one of the top 4 seeds. As long as Kevin McCullough is healthy, I don't care about the depth problems. Kansas has proved they can win without depth problems before. They're fine as long as he is fully healthy with Hunter Dickinson in the middle. Texas, of course, is a wild card. TCU, Oklahoma, but I still think BYU can be an absolute problem. They are the 5 seed here in the tournament, and they can definitely play Houston. That would be a great game on a neutral site against Houston because, again, it's contrast in styles. 3-point shooting, solid fundamentals. You saw BYU at Kansas. I think it can happen again.
Mike, TCU and Cincinnati and even in Kansas State. I'm not sure the Bearcats, the Wildcats will make it into March, but if they do, are they dangerous? And if you're a TCU or a Texas or an Oklahoma at the back end, are they dangerous?
Yeah, some of those teams are, but they're going to have to make it in. That's the key. If you look at Cincinnati, what I do like about them is they're relentless on the boards, which is why they were able to keep that Houston game close, 67-62, and then play them away. Besides Iowa State, Cincinnati actually played Houston the best. The problem is they don't make their free throws and they can't make 3-pointers. They remind me a lot of a Texas A&M team that needs to get hot. Now, if they can get some scoring and get some like a UConn years ago with Kemba Walker in the Big East tournament, you can get one player like a Wade Taylor with Texas A&M who can get hot. They can absolutely get carried because they're solid. The other back-end teams, tough for me to say. I like Jamie Dixon and TCU, and they're great in transition. You've seen success in the tournament when they played Arizona a few years ago. Almost were able to, I think they were able to knock them off. It was really close. They shoot 38% from 3-point range. So what I'm looking for, Drake, are teams that have a style and have high variance. You can see in the Sun Belt right now, Arkansas State now in the finals. Why? They shoot the 3 well. Their head coach, Bryan Hodgson, is a disciple of Nate Oates at Alabama. So I have no problem with a TCU. Physical team, battle-tested, can get hot from 3. That's what you're hoping for with one of these teams that makes a run, Cincinnati included, but they have to get hot on offense.
Before we talk the pretenders of this conference, I want to go back to something you said about Kansas and that starting 5. Even with Hunter Dickinson battling some injury issues and Kevin McCullough as well, to me, Mike, I've shifted from, hey, we need a ton of depth to, look, it's 5 guys on the court at once. St. Peter's did not upset Kentucky with depth. They did it with a starting 5 that played 38 minutes.
Yes.
How much should we value starting 5s in March when I just need you to win 2 games in 1 weekend?
Oh, 100%. It should matter. The depth is overrated because you know that bench gets tighter. Bill Self, to me, is the best coach in college basketball. What he's done every single year, produced different styles. You saw the team was banged up. They were still able to beat Kentucky a few years ago. He did an inverted triangle in 2. That is the type of team that can get rolling here. You have a point guard, which is critical for these upsets. You see the small school teams with a super quick point guard. They have a chance. They have everything that you need. DeJuan Harris is fantastic. Reminds me a lot of Monte Morris, the former Iowa State Cyclone point guard. A lot of assists, not a lot of turnovers. Dickinson, of course, the big man inside. The issue is the shooting, which is why McCullough is so important. I think depth is overrated. You have a solid starting 5 and one guy off the bench. That's should be good enough, especially with a coach like Bill Self, who coaches defense without fouling.
The 8th player down the line for Fairleigh Dickinson is not the reason they beat Purdue. And I'll say that until I'm blue in the face. Mike, pretenders in this conference, we have talked about a couple of those teams in that middle realm, but not as much about an Oklahoma or a Texas who look like they'll make it to March, or even a BYU who has had some strong games over the course of the regular season. Who do you isn't cut out for this whole tournament thing, but has still had a pretty good year in conference play?
Yeah, I'm not buying Texas. I'm not. Rodney Terry did an incredible job last year. Magic ride, much like Hubert Davis's magic ride. But it needs to be an adjustment period. Even John Shire at Duke went through a little bit of that last year. They got blitzed by Tennessee. I think Rodney Terry's struggled with consistency, which is normal. They're still 20-11. They're 9-9. I do not think they can string together enough games to make a run here in the NCAA tournament. Again, I like Grant McCaslin and Texas Tech. Solid defense, 3 wins in a row. I have questions about them, whether they can move forward, because their rebounding is weak. They're great on positional defense. They do shoot the 3 well, but I just struggle to see Texas Tech continue to put multiple games together. And the last one may surprise you. I'm just not ready to jump in on Baylor yet. I'm really not. They've been solid. They've had some good wins over Texas, Kansas, and TCU, but still the defensive numbers are not there. The rebounding is just okay this year. I don't see Baylor as a Final Four team. If you ask me who could make a Final Four run in the Big 12, Houston, no doubt. Iowa State, no doubt. Kansas certainly can make a run. I struggle to see Scott Drew there, as great a coach as he is, because his team has been a little inconsistent with the production, particularly from the freshmen.
Yep, exactly. For a freshman-led team, and then a Ray J. Dennis who has some great nights, and other times he reminds me a bit of Tyler Perry at Kansas State, the guy who could put up 25, but in the last 3 minutes, if he goes dormant, that 25 doesn't tell the true story of how he led you down the stretch. Let's go into the Big 12 tournament, how different teams should attack or approach their time in Kansas City, right here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go to make money. This last week, it's like, rent's coming up. Great. FanDuel exists. I go in and I bet on a BYU at home to win. And that is guaranteed in college basketball at this point. The Marriott Center is unreal. And FanDuel said, hey, since you won that bet, you get money. FanDuel.com/locked on right now. Any $5 bet on a money line for your favorite team that wins, you get $150 back in bonus bets. That is huge as March Madness comes up. There's same game parlays. You've got prop bets on college basketball players. With that 12 seed you like over the 5 seed, go to FanDuel. Throw $10, $20, as many bucks as you want on it, and see the return instantly on the FanDuel app. FanDuel.com/locked on, the official sportsbook sponsor of the NBA. Mike, talking Big 12 tournament here. The way that I see it, Houston can do nothing but be a 1 seed, no matter their result in the Big 12 tournament. Iowa State sitting around that 2, that 3 line. Baylor's in a similar position, according to Jerry Palm and Joe Lunardi. When you look at a tournament like this, do you recommend some teams just outright lose, or do you think everybody should be competing each game in front of them?
Drake, you ask a guy who's from the East Coast here, who saw the New York Giants in the NFL go all out against the New England Patriots on the last game of the regular season at home when the Patriots were undefeated. That didn't hurt them there. In fact, it was the reason that they were so confident in the Super Bowl they could come back and beat them about a month later. I'm going to go all out. Nothing is promised here in March. You can hang a banner, win the Big 12 tournament. I want to hang a banner. Look at all the years that Villanova did well in the Big East tournament, and that led them to greatness under Jay Wright. So maybe it's just my DNA. I am playing to win. I'm playing to win the game, as Herm Edwards said, and I think they should go after it, because whether you're getting a seed, whether you're building momentum, whether you're getting exposure for recruits, you want to make yourself a run. Even if you're a team that doesn't make the NCAA tournament but gets to the semifinals, that's something to build on. Let's try to get things going in the right direction. And who knows, maybe you can pull the upset, actually get into the tournament, and then make a run.
Are we overvaluing, from a national standpoint, the teams that lose out of their conference tournament being better set for March? Because every year around this time we hear, the national champion never wins their conference tournament. Is that all hogwash?
Yeah, I think it's hogwash. I've seen it before with Louisville. I've seen it with Kentucky. Yes, UConn last year did not win the Big East tournament, but that was a battle with Marquette. I was at that game. No, you want to win, and you play and you compete, and then you adjust. And by going all out, you're going to also get to see some weaknesses on your team, or maybe something that actually gets exposed. So if they win, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't make me nervous. It doesn't shy me away. If they get eliminated early in an upset, that could concern me a little bit. The only team that I've seen that kind of throws that theory out the window is whenever Syracuse was there with Jim Boeheim, they're on the bubble. Then they end up making a run with the ghost of Malachi Richardson against Virginia to the Final Four. But more often than not, you want to see at least a couple wins in the conference tournament. You get to the semis, you get to the finals, you're fine. But I would not shy away from winning, because what's the purpose? If you get to the Elite Eight and lose, you didn't win your conference tournament. Is that better? No, I'd rather lose in the Sweet 16 and win my conference tournament, because then you get to hang a banner.
Yeah, we've seen, Mike, a couple of these teams in the last few weeks. You talked about Baylor being inconsistent, didn't finish the regular season as strong as they wanted to. TCU had a home loss to UCF. There were a couple teams, even at Texas Tech, that, in my opinion, need that momentum moving forward. If they lose, their seeding might not be hurt entirely. But look, the inconsistency is still there. Who is it most important for that you win in a conference tournament setting? Is it those teams that have not found footing?
Yeah, it's the teams that haven't found footing. Also, because if you want to get in, how many times have we seen, Drake, when one of those teams who's in the first four get hot? I think every year except for one, that team, the 11 or 12 seed, I'm not talking about the 16 seeds who are also now dangerous, but the 11 or 12, they've won at least one game in the tournament every year except for one. And I think the 7-8 years, whatever it's been, that they've had the first four. Of course, it was kicked off by VCU, who went all the way to the Final Four. Yeah. So you look at a team like Kansas State, somebody like that. Yes, they win a couple games. You get into that play-in game, you can really get rolling. Tyler Perry can be like Jordan Crawford or Xavier years ago and have a magical run here. That sort of thing is what you want to look for. Those are the teams that I target that really need the wins.
Then Cincinnati and Kansas State, because those are the two that I circle. You'll get 9 teams in the Big 12 that likely get in. Texas, Oklahoma on the back end of that. We're talking Kansas State around that 10. Cincinnati the 11 range, though Net really doesn't like the Wildcats. Of those two teams, who are you more confident in to make a run in not just the Big 12 tournament, but March if they can get there?
Yeah, I think Cincinnati's beating West Virginia, so I'm already giving them one win here. And I give credit to Josh Eiler's impossible situation. They competed very well early, but they've struggled down the stretch. Yep. So Cincinnati's going to get that win. If Kansas State beats Texas, that's a quality win. I think both Cincinnati and Kansas State are in situations where they get 2 wins. They're in. Why? Cincinnati beats West Virginia, doesn't move the needle. Cincinnati beats Kansas, that moves the needle, and there's no reason they can't beat Baylor if they beat Kansas. Yeah. On the other hand, Kansas State beats Texas. That's a quality win. And then you beat Iowa State. That's going to put them in again as well. In fact, they just beat them in the Octagon of Doom. That would be the second one over Iowa State. That would lock it up. So those two teams need to take care of business in their first matchup. And then that second matchup, to me, is a playing game.
Mike, what you just did, what you just built here, which is a dream scenario, is an 11 team representation for the Big 12 in March Madness. Are you saying there is not just a chance, but a fighter's chance to have that happen?
Yes, I put it in every year. I look at the games, the 2 matchups there, the 11-12, I say which team is making a run. UCLA made a run to the Final Four a few years ago. They were losing to Michigan State in that game by 10. I am convinced that if the Spartans win that game, they're making the Final Four because you get hot with the matchups. People forget UCLA was barely in the tournament. They see Jaime Jaquez, they see all these great players. Folks, they were barely in the tournament. They were down double digits at the half. So yes, if the Big 12, as great as the conference is and as tough as this conference is, gets a team in there, watch out for the run.
Last but not least, Mike, for those teams that do not perform well in Kansas City, let's say a Houston loses in their first contest or an Iowa State, should they be worried? Is that enough to press the red button?
No, Houston is incredible. If Houston loses, it's going to be even though they've lost players like Tugler and Arsenault this year, that wouldn't bother me. They would end up losing potentially to Oklahoma, TCU. Fine, they're still a 1 seed. Iowa State, little concerned. If they can't get by Kansas State or Texas, I'd start to be a little worried because you've seen the teams that play their style, like Virginia, have great variance. They can get upset or they can make a run. So Iowa State going out early would make me concerned. They've played well at Hilton Magic. They've certainly won on the road. I think they have 4 wins on the road here in Big 12. Yeah. But don't go out early. You got to get back to winning here. You lost at Kansas State. Could at least put some pressure on Houston, who blowtorched Kansas at home. But it could have made it interesting if they didn't lose that game earlier in the day. I'd worry about Iowa State a little. No concern with Houston.
You mentioned Iowa State, a team that I believe can go to the Final Four because of the defense, or could lose 59-41 in the round of 64, just like they did last year to Pitt. It is the variance that you hit the nail on the head with, Mike. If folks like the stuff that you brought to the show today, I sure did, where can they find more of your work?
Come over to FTN Fantasy. Follow me on X at Randall Rand. I got my college basketball betting show 3 days a week. It's growing. We're going to be live after March Madness. Come join us. Jeff Ratcliffe is banging out reactions to all these NFL players that are getting signed today. It's the best time of year. So much excitement. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. That is Mike Randall of FTN. Drake Toll here from Locked On Big 12. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Come back tomorrow. We'll break more down from the NCAA tournament coming up to the Big 12 tournament this week. And there are games tomorrow as 11 and 14, 12 and 13 kick it off in this conference. Once again, this has been, always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.